Mr. President, first of all, I want to say how much I appreciate Senator Ernst, and when she talks about veterans, she talks about her own experience, but also the heart of veterans that she served with and sees every day, as well as her great dedication to people who are currently serving. But Veterans Day is a day that we come to celebrate every year. It's a national holiday, but in so many ways, Mr. President, it's uniquely a local holiday. Events across Missouri and across all of our states are pretty dramatically different based on where you are and the way that community over time, or maybe on a special occasion, has decided this is going to be the way they are uniquely going to celebrate Veterans Day. Now, these ceremonies often include the gestures of respect that are repeated over and over again, and that's exactly what you should do with respect. Respect doesn't wear out. We lay wreaths, we play music, we pledge to the flag, and I think in many ways a unique way on Veterans Day as we think about those who've been willing to defend that flag at all cost. There may be a 21-gun salute, there may be a parade, there are lots of different things, but every community honors its own neighbors in a different way. You know, and if you grew up in that community and you look at the wall with community names, or you look at the register at the courthouse with those who gave their lives in one of our wars, you recognize those names. Those are the same last names of the people you went to school with. They're the same last names of the people you grew up alongside of. They're often the names of the families that still live in that community. I was thinking about this. I thought about a first name. One of my good friends was, his middle name was after his uncle who had died in World War II. And he didn't particularly like his middle name. And he said one day to my dad, he said, "I hate that name. I don't like my middle name. I wish it wasn't my middle name." What he didn't know is that my dad had been on his uncle's high school basketball team. And he quickly pointed out that your uncle was, he said, one of the finest young men he ever knew. And this young man never got to be an older man because he'd given his life in World War II. And when my friend was born 15 years later, his family wanted to remember the name of that person who had served and made the ultimate sacrifice. Those are the kinds of things that we think about in communities on Veterans Day. I'll be going to some of those events, one at the Camdenton High School in Camdenton, Missouri. They'll be honoring 32 veterans at that event, and they'll also be recognizing the new junior ROTC program at the high school. You know, when we talk about local character, that's sort of what we're talking about. In Camdenton, not just honoring those who served and sacrificed before, but also those in a new generation who are stepping up and being willing to serve and being willing to, among those later to be recognized on Veterans Day. I'm going to go to a ceremony in Wright County, just a little bit down the road, maybe an hour away, hour and 15 minutes away from Camdenton. And at that ceremony, they're going to have a new Wright County Patriots Memorial in Hartville. And the memorial will honor people from that area who served and died in every conflict from the Civil War to the War on Terror. And the organizers have made it clear that this is a day of celebration, not of sorrow, but a day to celebrate those who served, some who got their name on the wall, others who didn't give their life in conflict but were willing to. They were willing to put on the uniform. They were willing to go through the training. In many cases, they were willing to go into a dangerous situation and didn't have to make the ultimate sacrifice. But on Veterans Day, we recognize veterans who were willing to serve. You know, this will be the 100th anniversary of the first Veterans Day. It was originally called Armistice Day, and it was Armistice Day because it was the day that commemorated the end of World War I. Now, World War I at the end was called, during the war, the Great War. At the end of the war, it was called the War to End All Wars. That's not what happened, but that's what people thought in the hours after World War I might have happened. It was so horrible, so terrible, so many lives were lost that they thought it might be the war to end all wars. It ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 100 years ago. The United States lost 116,000 people in the relatively short time we were in that war. We got in the war late. We made a difference in the war, but 116,000 people in that period of time in that truly grueling battle, World War I, died. Another 200,000 U.S. troops were wounded in that war. But the first Veterans Day, the year later, was not about what was lost, but it was a celebration of what was won. It ended with the end of the war. It reaffirmed commitment to democracy. And on that first holiday 100 years ago, President Wilson said that, quote, "The reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service and with gratitude for the victory." Remembering the heroism of those who were lost, remembering all who were willing to serve, and on that first anniversary of the end of World War I, remembering the victory that that service achieved. We've used this occasion ever since to honor and remember our veterans with pride and with gratitude. I'm glad we're continuing to build new memorials like the one in Wright County. I'm glad we continue to honor people who are willing to serve, like the recognition of the new ROTC program at the Camden High School. A lot of things have changed in the 100 years since the end of World War I. But the point is, this hasn't changed. This isn't something that Americans used to do. It's something we continue to do. As Senator Ernst said so well, it's something that we need to do every day. Veteran Day is a special recognition, but to be sure that veterans have what they need while they're serving, and then once they become veterans, to be sure they have everything they were promised and then some. Every access to health care that they were promised, and I think we've successfully expanded not only the kind of health care that people can get, but also the way they can get their health care, the access to respect and appreciation, the remembrance of what you did and how that might have led to a behavioral health challenge or a health challenge of some other kind, and a country willing to step up for those who were willing to step up for us, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.